The sun blazed mercilessly over the Arizona territory, burning everything beneath it. Mason Wade tracked hoof, prints across cracked earth, his Spencer rifle easy in his hands. 3 days he'd been after the Blackwell gang, 3 days of dust, hunger, and sleep with one eye open. They'd taken his best quarter horse. He meant to get it back. He dismounted near a ridge, tied his gelding to a mesquite, and chambered around. The metallic click echoed across the rocks, a sound that usually meant death. Crawling to the ridge's edge, he spotted 3 men below, Blackwell's crew. His horse stood tethered nearby. Mason took aim. The rifle barked once. Jeb Blackwell, the biggest of them, spun and fell clutching his shoulder. His men scattered for cover. Mason called out steady as a preacher, "Leave my horse and ride out. Next one goes through your heart, not his shoulder." The standoff held for a breath. Then the outlaws dragged their wounded leader onto a horse and fled. When the dust settled, Mason walked down, his stolen quarter horse nickering soft in recognition. "Good to see you too, Thunder," he murmured. Back in Dry Creek, the town with more whiskey than water, Mason loaded up on supplies. The storekeeper, Thornton, eyed him curiously. "I heard the Blackwells took your horse." "Ad," Mason replied. "Word is they're working for a big outfit now. Railroad money." Before Mason could answer, Thornton added, "Sheriff Hammond's looking for you. Says it's army business." Mason's stomach tightened. He'd had enough of the army to last a lifetime. But he went. The sheriff, old and gray, rose from his chair when Mason entered. Good timing. Lieutenant Calhoun's at the depot, stirring up trouble again. Together they walked to the new rail station. A crowd had gathered. At the center stood Calhoun. Young, crisp uniform, dead eyes. Beside him, bound by the wrist, stood a woman, Apache. Copper skin, proud, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond the jeering crowd. Calhoun smiled thinly. "I caught this one aiding hostiles. Could hang her, but in the spirit of civilization, I'll sell her for domestic service. $20. Murmurs. Then a saloon keeper, Dawson, called out, "N." "A 15. Another man shouted. "The 20. Dawson again grinning. The Apache woman didn't flinch, but Mason saw the tension in her jaw. He'd seen that look before, in prisoners who refused to break. "A 50, Mason said. The crowd fell silent. Calhoun's smile faltered. $50. Sold. As Mason stepped forward, Calhoun eyed him coldly. "Former Union scout, isn't it? Tell me, Mr. Wade, what debt are you paying?" "I aim in decency," Mason said, counting out the bills. He cut the woman's ropes. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Ka," she said quietly. "I'm Mason Wade. My place is north of town. You can ride or walk. Your choice." Ka steadied him long, then mounted behind him. As they rode out under the fading sun, Mason caught sight of an older Apache man watching from an alley before disappearing into shadow. At his homestead, a modest cabin, barn, and half-dead garden, Mason helped cut down. "There's food inside, water by the porch. You're free to go whenever you like." She didn't move. "We pay money if not to own. Donate if not to own." Because what Calhoun did wasn't right. "You white men fight wars over owning people," she said flatly, "then buy people to free them." Mason almost smiled. "I can't argue with that." She drank deeply from the water barrel. Scars lined her forearms, old defensive wounds. "I'll stay," she said finally, "until the corn moon. And I go north for—" That night Mason slept in the barn, rifle close. Something told him his life had just taken a dangerous turn. Before dawn, the sound of horses woke him. 3 riders in the yard, Dawson and 2 of his thugs. "Come on out, Wade," Dawson called. "That woman's army property. Hand her over." "The private property is an army property," Mason said, aiming from the barn shadow. One of the men raised his shotgun. Mason fired. The man dropped, screaming. Then Ka moved like smoke, a knife flashing in her hand. It struck the second man's thigh. He howled and fell. Mason's next shot sent Dawson scrambling. When it was done, Ka retrieved her blade. "You throw knives well," Mason said. "My father taught me before the soldiers came." "And you shoot well," she added. "Once," he said. They stood silent a moment, catching breath. "They'll come back," she warned. "Probably." "Why did you really buy me?" Mason hesitated. "Joe had a wife and son." "Raiders killed them." "Said it was Apache. Took me years to learn the truth. It was white men hired to look like Indians. They wanted our land." Ka's eyes softened. "Then you hate no one now?" "I've learned to hate the right people." When Mason asked about her capture, she answered simply, "I am a healer. Took medicine from the fort for sick children. Calhoun caught me." Days passed. Ka worked the garden with quiet skill, teaching Mason which herbs healed, which killed. She began to soften, speaking more. Mason found himself listening. One afternoon, Sheriff Hammond caught him in town. "You've stirred up trouble. Calhoun sent word to Fort Bowie. Says you're harboring an escaped prisoner. She was sold," Mason protested. "It doesn't matter. Calhoun's working with the railroad. They want your land for their line." That night, Ka told him the truth about the watcher in town. It was her father, Black Hawk, a respected Apache leader. Later, a soft whistle echoed outside. 3 notes rising, 2 falling. Ka tensed, answered the signal, and moments later, Black Hawk himself stepped from the shadows. He entered quietly, nodding once to Mason. "You freed my daughter when you did not have to," he said. "The soldiers plan to strike our camp in 5 days, led by the one called Calhoun." Mason frowned. "For what?" "Railroad wants our land. They use war as excuse." Mason's jaw tightened. "That's what they did in Texas." Black Hawk's gaze sharpened. "We know. The same men who burned your home rode with Blackwell once. They serve Calhoun now." The truth hit like a hammer. "We could stop this," Mason said. "If we get proof, Calhoun's orders, payments, maps. Show the governor what's really happening." Black Hawk studied him. "Why would you help us?" "Because I've been fighting the wrong war for 10 years. Black Hawk nodded. 3 days. We meet again here. That night, Mason and Ka prepared. When she asked if he was afraid, he said, "A fear keeps a man alive." She smiled faintly. "You are not what I expected," Mason weighed. Under the moonless sky, they approached Fort Bowie. 4 sentries, 2 at the gate, 1 by the stables. Mason had a plan. Hide in the nightly supply wagon. The driver was drunk, easy to disarm. Minutes later, they rolled through the gate. Inside, Ka slipped away, silent as mist. They met at Calhoun's office, Ka picking the lock with a hairpin. Mason rifled through drawers, Ka through cabinets. Then she whispered, "Here, orders for an attack. Supply lists, payments from New Horizon Railroad. Even entries showing weapons delivered to the Blackwell gang. Proof enough to damn them all." A floorboard creaked. The doorknob turned. Calhoun stepped in. Mason swung his revolver like a club. The officer crumpled without a sound. They ran as alarms broke out, shots ringing across the fort. Mason fired back as they leapt onto the wagon and tore through the gate, sparks flying from the horses' hooves. By dawn, they reached Mason's homestead. Tired, dirty, but alive, with the papers intact. Black Hawk and a handful of warriors were already waiting. Mason spread the documents on the table. Proof Calhoun and New Horizon armed Blackwell's men, staged raids, killed settlers and Apache alike. "This will stop the attack?" Kia asked. "Not by itself," Mason said. "But if these reach the governor, it will end Calhoun." They agreed to meet the next day at a canyon north of the farm, a place to stand or die together. As Kia left with her father, she paused, touching Mason's arm softly. "Be careful. Calhoun's not your only enemy now." Mason watched them vanish into the desert, then packed the documents. But before sunset, he saw riders on the horizon, Dawson, Blackwell, and Calhoun among them. He barricaded himself in the cabin. Calhoun called out to surrender the papers and live. Mason aimed his rifle. "I care about justice, not bargains." The gunfire started. For an hour, bullets tore through the walls. Mason held his ground, firing only when sure. But when flames caught the roof, he knew it was over. He gathered the papers, smashed the back window, and escaped through smoke and dust. Leaping into the barn, he mounted Thunder and burst out into the open, gunfire chasing him. His cabin, his redemption, burned behind him. But the truth was safe in his saddlebag. At the ridge ahead, riders appeared, Black Hawk and his warriors waiting. Mason joined them without a word, their silhouettes merging against the first light of dawn. Together, Apache and White rode toward the canyon where the real battle waited. Not just for land, but for justice. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient, indifferent. Yet for those men and women who rode beneath them, hope burned like a campfire in the dark. Mason Wade, who had lost everything to hate, had finally found his redemption, not in revenge, but in the fragile alliance of 2 peoples fighting for the same truth. And as the desert wind carried the first light of morning across the canyon's rim, Mason knew that whatever came next, he would not face it alone.